My phone buzzed at exactly 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that started like any other. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my Boston real estate office when Sophie's Instagram notification lit up my screen. My soon-to-be ex-wife had posted another retail therapy story, this time from Cartwright & Sons, the most expensive jewelry store on Newbury Street. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Treating myself because I deserve it, she'd captioned the video, flashing a diamond bracelet that probably cost more than most people's cars. The comments were already pouring in from her influencer friends. Yas queen, and you're glowing, babe. What Sophie didn't know was that I'd been watching her spending habits like a hawk ever since she moved out 3 months ago. Our separation agreement was crystal clear. She had no access to our joint accounts. Yet somehow she'd been living like a lottery winner. I called my bank immediately. Mr. Matthews, yes, I see the issue, said Janet, my personal banker. Your wife has been using a secondary card linked to your business account. Technically legal since you never formally removed her access, but remove it. Now. Sir, if she's currently making a purchase. Especially if she's currently making a purchase. I hung up and opened Sophie's Instagram live stream. She was at the jewelry counter, surrounded by her giggling entourage, about to buy a $15,000 necklace for the cameras. Kylie Morrison, her best friend and fellow influencer, was recording everything. This is going to look amazing with my new Versace dress, Sophie announced to her phone screen. Sometimes you just have to invest in yourself, you know? The sales associate ran her card. Once, twice, 3 times. I'm sorry, ma'am, but this card has been declined. Sophie's perfectly contoured face went pale. That's impossible. Try it again. I watched through the screen as my wife's world began to crumble in real time, broadcast to her 50,000 followers. The sales associate, clearly uncomfortable, attempted the transaction again. Same result. Maybe try a different card? Kylie suggested, still filming. Sophie fumbled through her designer purse, producing 2 more cards. Both declined. The comments on her live stream were shifting from supportive to confused to downright cruel. Girl, what's happening? Someone wrote. This is so awkward, posted another. I leaned back in my leather chair, watching the chaos unfold. Sophie was frantically trying to call someone. Probably me. Good thing I'd blocked her number an hour ago. The jewelry store scene was just the beginning. Within hours, videos of Sophie's public humiliation were circulating on every social media platform. Someone had screen-recorded her Instagram live stream, and it was spreading like wildfire through Boston's social circles. Sophie's meltdown at Cartwright & Sons had been spectacular. After her cards were declined, she'd demanded to speak to the manager, insisting there had been some mistake. When security was called, she'd screamed that she was Sophie Matthews, the Sophie Matthews, as if that meant something to anyone besides her delusional followers. The manager, a dignified older gentleman, had politely but firmly asked her to leave. Sophie had thrown her purse at the jewelry case, thankfully bulletproof glass, and stormed out while Kylie and the other influencers scrambled to stop recording. But the damage was done. The video had over 200,000 views by evening. My phone started ringing around 6 p.m. Friends, colleagues, even my elderly mother calling to ask if I'd seen the video. I played dumb, expressing shock and concern for my troubled wife. Luke, what's going on with Sophie? Asked my business partner, David Chen. The whole city's talking about her breakdown at that jewelry store. I honestly don't know, David. We've been separated for months. Maybe the stress is getting to her. That night, I decided to escalate things. Sophie had spent our entire marriage embarrassing me with her narcissistic behavior, her constant need for attention, her treating me like a walking ATM. She'd moved out claiming she needed space to find herself, but really she'd been planning to take half of everything I'd worked for while continuing to live off my success. I made 3 phone calls. First, to the luxury car dealership where Sophie leased her BMW. As the account holder, I had every right to terminate the lease immediately. They'd pick up the car by morning. Second, to the exclusive Beacon Hill Spa where Sophie held a $5,000 annual membership. Cancelled. Third, to my lawyer, instructing him to document every violation of our separation agreement. Sophie was about to learn that actions have consequences. The next morning brought fresh entertainment. Sophie had posted a rambling Instagram story at 3 a.m., claiming she was the victim of financial abuse and that her controlling ex-husband was trying to destroy her. The post was full of spelling errors and obvious signs that she'd been drinking. Her followers weren't buying it. The comments were brutal. Maybe get a job instead of spending other people's money. This is what happens when you marry for money instead of love. Girl, you need help, not a shopping spree. By noon, the BMW had been repossessed from her apartment complex. Sophie called the dealership screaming, but there was nothing they could do. The lease was in my name, and I'd followed all proper procedures. She tried calling me from different numbers, but I'd prepared for that too. Every call went straight to voicemail. That evening, I attended the monthly Boston Business Association mixer at the Fairmont Copley Plaza. It was the kind of event Sophie used to love. Rich people in expensive clothes, networking and gossiping over champagne and canapes. I was discussing a new development project with potential investors when I spotted Sophie across the room. She'd somehow managed to get past security and was making her way through the crowd, clearly looking for me. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, and she was wearing the same dress from 2 days ago. Several people were staring and whispering. "Luke," she called out, her voice carrying across the elegant ballroom. "Luke, we need to talk." Every conversation in our vicinity stopped. I calmly excused myself from my business discussion and walked toward her, maintaining my composure. "Sophie, what are you doing here?" "You know exactly what you're doing," she hissed, swaying slightly. She'd definitely been drinking. "You cut off my cards, you took my car, you're trying to ruin me." "I'm enforcing our separation agreement," I replied quietly, aware that phones were coming out around us. "You violated the terms by accessing accounts you weren't authorized to use." "That's bullshit, and you know it," she screamed. "You're just mad because I finally stood up to your controlling behavior." The crowd was growing larger, people pulling out phones to record the drama. I could see the gleam in their eyes. This was better than any reality TV show. "Sophie, you're making a scene. Maybe you should go home and don't you dare patronize me." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my jacket. "You think you can just destroy my life because your ego can't handle me being successful?" I gently removed her hand from my arm. "Successful? Sophie, you haven't worked a day in 3 years. Your success was built entirely on my money." The crowd murmured. Someone snickered. Sophie's face turned red with rage and humiliation. "You bastard," she whispered. Then louder. "You're an abusive piece of shit, and everyone should know it." That's when I decided to end this once and for all. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd prepared for exactly this moment. Screenshots of Sophie's DMs with her secret boyfriend, Brandon Carter, a wannabe tech entrepreneur who was just as fake as she was. Photos of her shopping sprees charged to my accounts. Records of her lies about working, while she was actually day drinking with her influencer friends. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced to the crowd, my voice carrying clearly across the silent ballroom. "Since my wife has decided to make our private matters public, I think you should see what her success really looks like." I connected my phone to the room's presentation system, a feature I'd helped design when my company renovated this ballroom 2 years ago. The screens around the room lit up with Sophie's messages to Brandon. "Luke has no idea about us. Keep spending his money, baby. He's too stupid to figure it out." Sophie went white. The crowd gasped. Phones were recording everything. "This is fake," she screamed. "He's lying." But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank statements showing thousands in charges at restaurants where she'd been with Brandon while telling me she was at business meetings. Screenshots of her laughing about my pathetic attempts to save our marriage while she planned her exit strategy. The final image was a photo Brandon had sent her just yesterday. Him holding the keys to a new Porsche with the message, "Thanks for the loan, babe. Your husband's credit is amazing." Sophie tried to grab my phone, but hotel security was already moving toward us. She was escorted out while screaming threats and accusations that nobody believed anymore. The room erupted in conversations. Business cards were still being exchanged, but now everyone was talking about the drama they'd just witnessed. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You're going to pay for this. B." Brandon Carter was apparently ready to make his move. Brandon Carter showed up at my office the next morning like he owned the place. My secretary, Maria, tried to stop him, but he pushed past her into my private office, slamming the door behind him. He was exactly what I'd expected from Sophie's Instagram posts. Designer everything, perfectly styled hair, and the kind of fake confidence that comes from never being challenged. At 35, he looked like he'd stepped out of a tech startup brochure. "We need to talk," he announced, standing in front of my desk like some kind of action movie villain. "Brandon Carter, I presume." I didn't look up from my computer. "Sophie's boy toy. How's the Porsche? You think you're real clever, don't you?" He was trying to sound threatening, but his voice cracked slightly. Humiliating Sophie like that. Stealing her money. Her money. I finally looked at him. Interesting choice of words. Last I checked, Sophie never earned a dime of that money. Neither did you, for that matter. She's my girlfriend now. We're together. And I'm not going to let you keep abusing her. I laughed. Actually laughed. Abusing her. Brandon, I gave Sophie everything she wanted for 5 years. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, a lifestyle she could never afford on her own. The only thing I asked for in return was basic respect and fidelity. Apparently that was too much. You controlled her every move. I paid her bills. There's a difference. Brandon stepped closer to my desk, trying to intimidate me. Well, things are different now. Sophie's with me and I take care of what's mine. With what money? I pulled up my laptop screen, showing him a credit report I'd obtained that morning. Your startup went bankrupt 6 months ago. Your Porsche is leased, and you're 3 months behind on payments. Your penthouse apartment, also behind on rent. You've been living off my wife's stolen credit cards. His face went red. You have no right to. I have every right. See, Brandon, when someone steals from me, I make it my business to know everything about them. I stood up, and Brandon took an unconscious step backward. I'm not a big man, but 15 years of boxing had given me a presence that tech bros like Brandon couldn't fake. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to stay away from Sophie. You're going to stop using credit cards linked to my accounts, and you're going to disappear from my life. Or what? Or I'll make sure everyone in Boston knows exactly what kind of man you really are. Brandon's fake confidence was cracking. You can't prove anything. I opened another folder on my laptop. Fraud charges for using stolen credit information, identity theft for opening accounts in Sophie's name without proper authorization, and my personal favorite, your little cryptocurrency scam that bilked elderly investors out of their retirement savings. His face went completely pale. How did you... Money talks, Brandon, and I have a lot more of it than you do. He tried one last desperate move, reaching across my desk like he was going to grab my laptop. That's when my boxing training kicked in. I caught his wrist and twisted it just enough to make him yelp. Not enough to break anything, but enough to make my point crystal clear. Don't, I said quietly. You're not built for physical confrontation, and we both know it. I released his wrist, and he stumbled backward, cradling his arm. This isn't over, he muttered. Yes, it is? After Brandon left, I called my private investigator. If these two wanted to play games, I was going to make sure I won. The next few days brought a cascade of consequences. Sophie's Instagram following started dropping as more evidence of her lies surfaced. Someone had leaked additional screenshots of her messages, showing her mocking her own followers as pathetic losers who lived vicariously through her fake lifestyle. Brandon's situation was even worse. His landlord had served him with eviction papers, and his Porsche had been repossessed in broad daylight outside his favorite coffee shop. The video went viral on TikTok, but they weren't done fighting. Sophie and Brandon decided to team up for one final assault on my reputation. They created a joint Instagram live stream claiming I was a dangerous sociopath who had destroyed their lives out of jealousy. The stream was a disaster. Sophie was clearly drunk again, slurring her words and contradicting herself every few minutes. Brandon kept checking his phone and looking around nervously, like he expected someone to arrest him. Their story fell apart within minutes. Sophie claimed I had stolen her car, but viewers quickly pointed out that the lease was in my name. Brandon insisted he was a successful entrepreneur, but someone in the comments posted a link to news articles about his failed cryptocurrency scheme. The final nail in the coffin came when Kylie Morrison, Sophie's former best friend, joined the stream uninvited. Sophie, stop lying, Kylie said bluntly. Everyone knows you cheated on Luke. Everyone knows you've been stealing his money. Just admit it and move on. Sophie exploded. You backstabbing bitch. You were supposed to be my friend. I was your friend until you tried to get me to lie to your divorce lawyer, Kylie shot back. I'm not going to perjury for your fake victim story. The stream devolved into screaming and name-calling before Brandon finally ended it. But the damage was done. Thousands of people had watched Sophie's mask slip completely, revealing the entitled, manipulative person she'd always been. My phone rang an hour later. It was Sophie, calling from yet another number. Luke, please, she said, her voice small and defeated. Can we just talk? Like adults? I'm listening. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But this has gone too far. I'm losing everything. You lost everything the moment you decided to cheat on me and steal my money. I'll pay it back. I'll do whatever you want. Just please stop. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Sophie, you had 5 years to treat me with basic human decency. You chose to lie, cheat, and steal instead. These are just the consequences of your choices. But I love you, she whispered. No, you don't. You love my money. There's a difference. I hung up and blocked that number too. The war was almost over, but I had one final move to make. The charity gala at the Four Seasons was supposed to be my victory lap. As one of the event's major sponsors, I had a prime table and a speaking slot about urban development projects that benefit underprivileged communities. What I didn't expect was for Sophie and Brandon to crash the party. They arrived separately, probably thinking they were being clever. Sophie had somehow managed to get herself together. New dress, professional makeup, hair styled perfectly. She looked like the woman I'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. Brandon was harder to spot at first. He'd ditched his usual flashy style for a conservative suit and had somehow gotten past security with a fake invitation. I was mingling with potential investors when I saw them converging near the bar. They were planning something, and I had a pretty good idea what it was. "Ladies and gentlemen," the event coordinator announced, "please welcome our keynote speaker, Luke Matthews of Matthews Development Group." I walked to the podium, looking out at the crowd of Boston's elite. 300 people in designer clothes, holding champagne glasses, ready to hear about my latest projects. "Thank you for being here tonight," I began. "Before I talk about our development work, I want to address something personal that many of you have probably heard about." A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't what they'd expected. 3 weeks ago, my wife Sophie and her boyfriend Brandon decided to make our private business very public. They've been spreading lies about me on social media, claiming I'm abusive and controlling. I could see Sophie and Brandon pushing through the crowd, trying to get closer to the stage. I've stayed quiet out of respect for my wife's privacy, but since she's decided to turn our divorce into a public spectacle, I think you deserve to know the truth. The screens around the ballroom lit up with financial records I'd prepared. Bank statements showing Sophie's unauthorized spending, credit card records from her shopping sprees with Brandon, screenshots of their messages planning to take Luke for everything he's worth. Sophie Matthews and Brandon Carter have stolen over $200,000 from my accounts over the past 6 months, I announced. They used that money to fund a lifestyle of luxury shopping, expensive dinners, and exotic vacations while telling the world that I was financially abusing my wife. Sophie was screaming from the crowd, but the microphone drowned her out. Brandon Carter, who claims to be a successful tech entrepreneur, is actually a convicted fraudster who stole retirement savings from elderly investors. His cryptocurrency company was shut down by federal regulators, and he's currently facing multiple lawsuits. Brandon tried to rush the stage, but hotel security intercepted him. "And Sophie," I continued, looking directly at her, "my wife of 5 years has been documenting our private conversations and sharing them with tabloid bloggers for money. She's been planning to divorce me and take half of my assets while continuing to steal from my accounts." The final image on the screens was a contract Sophie had signed with a gossip website, agreeing to provide exclusive insider details about Luke Matthews' abusive behavior in exchange for $50,000. The crowd was silent. You could hear a pin drop in that ballroom. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy," I said. "I'm telling you this because these two people have spent weeks trying to destroy my reputation and my business with lies. They've cost me clients, damaged my relationships, and caused incredible stress for my family and employees." Sophie had stopped screaming. She was just standing there, tears streaming down her face as everyone stared at her. "The police have been notified about the theft. My lawyers have filed for an emergency divorce hearing, and both Sophie and Brandon will be facing criminal charges for fraud and identity theft." I paused, looking out at the crowd one final time. "Now, let's talk about something more pleasant. Our new affordable housing project is going to provide homes for 500 families who actually deserve them." The applause was thunderous. After my speech, I watched from across the room as Sophie and Brandon were escorted out by police. The fraud charges I'd filed that morning had finally caught up with them. Kylie Morrison approached me at the bar, looking nervous. "Luke, I just wanted you to know that I never supported what Sophie was doing. I tried to talk her out of it." "I know, Kylie. Thank you for telling the truth during their live stream." "She was my friend, but what she did to you was wrong. Nobody deserves that." I nodded. "She made her choices." My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. "Both arrested. Sophie's looking at 2 to 5 years for fraud. Brandon's facing federal charges. It's over." I looked around the ballroom at the people who'd supported me, the business partners who'd stood by me, the friends who'd seen through Sophie's lies. This was my real life, not the fake Instagram fantasy Sophie had been trying to create. Sophie Matthews and Brandon Carter had tried to destroy me with lies and theft. Instead, they destroyed themselves with their own greed and stupidity. Justice had been served, and it tasted better than the champagne.